We've seen people heal themselves of Parkinson's disease more than once, have one response to some very serious event in their life that produced a very strong emotion. And in 1 hour, their condition returned because they literally went back to their old self. And we've seen that person turn around and reverse the condition again. Again, people do the best with what they think is available. The person standing on the stage, we've had numerous physicians and researchers stand on the stage, they're the 4-minute mile. They're telling the community, I'm the example of truth. This is no longer philosophy. This is no longer theory. Here's my scans. We had someone with bilateral breast cancer just recently. No evidence of cancer in her breasts or any lymph nodes, no longer in her liver. I'm looking out at the audience, and everybody's leaning in. There's the 4-minute mile, and that person's telling the truth, and they're telling a story, and it's not pretty. It's not always rosy. They went through a lot of dark nights. They went through a lot of their condition getting worse. But every day they had to show up for themselves. If they stopped showing up and doing the work, they would really not believe it was possible. But if they showed up and did the work, it means that they believe it's possible. And I think when you believe in possibility, you got to believe in yourself. When you believe in yourself, you got to believe in possibility. So it used to be a few examples of that. Now we have so many great testimonials, so many great stories that now it's becoming infectious, just like a virus or any bacteria becomes infectious. Now health and wellness becomes as infectious as disease. And you get a community of people starting to break through, and you start seeing these changes where people stand on the stage. Invariably, you're going to see a very strong shift in consciousness, and consciousness is awareness. And if you're unaware that you could actually heal yourself, you'll make the same choice. Once you see it, I think it starts creating a brush fire, and that's really the exciting part. So we're seeing so many great testimonials that are undeniably great stories of transformation. And many, many of those people still no longer have their eczema, still no longer have their Parkinson's, still no longer have their cancer.
Yeah, since the last time we spoke, I know your team of researchers went and did some work. I wanted to ask you some questions about this. You did some research on the impact of 1-minute breath work. How does this impact our heart rate variability, and how does HRV impact our anxiety?
Let's talk about heart rate variability, because it's an important thing. So your brain is trying to control and predict everything that's taking place in your life, because stress is actually created when you can't predict something, you can't control something, or you have the perception that something's going to get worse, okay? So you switch on that primitive nervous system, the fight or flight nervous system, and as you shift your attention from one person to another thing, to another place, to another problem, every one of those different elements has a neurological network in your brain. So the arousal of the hormones to say, pay attention, there's danger. As you start shifting your attention to each one of these elements that have neurological networks in your brain starts firing very incoherently. And in fact, you could actually, by thinking about your problems, turn on the stress response just by thought alone. And that's what most people do. So now there you are, you're sitting in traffic. The heart is pumping because it's trying to get blood to the extremities, because a primitive system is switching on, saying that there's a predator, there's danger. And the heart is beating against closed arteries. And the heart starts beating out of rhythm, it starts beating out of order, and it starts beating very incoherently. So when you have incoherence in the brain, and you have incoherence in the heart, when waves are incoherent, when they intersect with each other, they cancel each other out. And when they cancel each other out, that's less energy in the brain. If there's less energy in the brain, you're going to default to some of those reflexive systems. If energy is diminished in the heart, you're not going to trust. You're not going to be vulnerable. You're not going to want to commune. You're not going to want to connect. You're not going to want to feel grateful. It's not a time to feel any of those things. It's time to run, fight, and hide. Okay, so most people say, okay, well, I had a stressful day. I was stressed out the entire day. And at the end of the day, they turn on the TV and they relax. The important thing to realize is that if you're relying on something outside of you to change that emotional state, you'll become dependent on it. So is it possible then to begin to create more coherence in the brain? And the answer is yes, because when you're under the gun of those chemicals of survival, you're narrowing your focus on the cause. You hear something moving in the bushes, you freeze, and you narrow your focus. And it's that narrowing of focus that tends to be obsessive. When we're in stress, we overthink things, we overanalyze. That actually, we've discovered, makes the brain worse. And it actually makes the heart regulate more out of order. So then we said, okay, if the brain is narrowing its focus and it's becoming over-attentive, what if we teach it how to do something else? What if we teach it how to broaden its focus? And instead of focusing on something material or something known, just open up and focus on nothing.